Welcome back to Design Foundations, episode 13. Today, we're going to talk about something that affects everything and everyone: your energy, your mood, your immune system, behavior, learning, and honestly, just the ability to feel like yourself. So we're talking all about sleep today. And before you hit pause thinking she's just going to tell me it's more important and I need to get more of it, and I am in fact going to say those things, we're going to learn a little bit more why it is such a foundation. And when this is rocked and when we have a crack in the foundation of our sleep and we are not sleeping well, it can be really hard to build on the other foundations in health. So I've seen this personally and professionally. If we skip this step in our foundation, nothing else works. Welcome to Design Foundations, the podcast where faith, family health, and true wellness come together. I'm Kelly, an integrative health practitioner, optometrist, and mom who's been where you are. I know how overwhelming it can feel to navigate health challenges for yourself and your family. That's why I'm here, to help you uncover the root causes of those struggles and help you build an unshakable foundation for a thriving life where you feel rooted, replenished, and restored. In each episode, we'll cut through the noise, talk about practical tips, and share real-life stories to encourage and equip you. You've got what it takes to create lasting wellness. I'm just here to help you get there. Let's dive in. So, supplements aren't going to fix it. Detox protocols are not going to fix it. Even the best natural remedies will fall short without having deep restorative sleep. So, this episode, of course, I cannot cover everything. It will not be all encompassing, but I really want to focus on the nitty gritty of what I would want you to know about sleep from a foundational level, what it looks like if we're not getting deep restorative sleep, both as an adult and a child, and then some very basic practical steps that you can leave with and start putting into action to start building on a better foundation of rest or sleep. So we're going to dive right in. First, just being an understanding, why is sleep such a foundational pillar? So I want you to think of your health like a house, and your diet, your movement, your supplements, all the other therapies that you're doing are the walls, the furniture, the paint, but the foundation is sleep. So when that foundation starts to crack, when we're not sleeping well, everything else begins to crumble. So we said that sleep affects our mood, our immune system, behavior, learning. All of those things are going to start to crumble if I'm not getting restorative rest. So sleep really isn't a luxury, but truly this is going to be where healing really happens during this sleep. So what's happening while we sleep? At night, your body is doing all of the things that it cannot do during the day. So if we're busy and distracted, my brain's not going to have the ability to just go into the parasympathetic state and start detoxing and getting rid of all the things that it doesn't need. It's not just resting during this time. It actually goes into a repair and rebuild state. So during sleep, your body is detoxifying. Your brain and liver are really going to work here. This is why when I'm not getting restorative sleep, everyone has experienced at one time or another, not getting good rest. What happens when you wake up? We're brain fogged. You can't process. You have a headache. Everything just feels off. And that's because the brain or the lymphatic system really didn't get an opportunity to do the detox that it does overnight. Your liver is the same. So remember, your liver is processing and detoxing everything that goes in your mouth. This is why a clean diet is important. Everything that goes on your skin. So this is why we advocate for clean personal body products, because your liver is having to do all of that extra work. Plus it's detoxifying everything in the environment around you. So your liver has a huge job. And this is usually one of the first things in blood work that we see imbalanced quite a bit, secondary to just the large job that it has to do. And if I'm not sleeping well, then my body's not giving the time that it needs to the liver and the brain to be able to do the things that they need to do. So while we're sleeping, the body's also growing and restoring cells. This is where hormones get reset and are regulated. This is where the immune system is going to be strengthened. Emotions are going to be processed here. Memories are going to be stored. And this is really when, during this time, the gut and nervous system are really being supported as well. So this is especially critical for our kids, because kids need sleep for both their brain and their bodies to grow, for their behavior to stay regulated, for their immune strength to build. So if your child's constantly sick, if they're moody, if they're hyperactive, they're having different types of sensory issues, sleep could be playing a much, much bigger role than you think. And it's definitely one of the foundational pillars that you want to go back to and really start to unravel it, or just start looking at all of the different layers. We're going to mention some of those in just a little bit. So there's different sleep stages when we're sleeping. So of course there's awake, there's that light sleep, there's deep sleep, and this is where healing starts to happen. And then there's our REM sleep, and this is where emotional and cognitive restoration is happening. So deep sleep is when the body basically flushes inflammation, balances hormone, this burning fat, detoxes the brain through the lymphatic system. That's a fancy word for that. This is basically a system that acts like a nighttime brain bath. And so it's cleaning up cellular waste actually while we sleep. REM sleep is actually when your brain starts to recharge. So this is when memories are stored, emotional stress is processed, and your central nervous system just starts to restore energy. And we absolutely need both of these stages to get deep restorative sleep. So then the next kind of thing to understand in this is the circadian rhythm, which is basically, you might have heard that term. This is your body's internal clock. That's really what you need to know. And this clock, as you know, works on a 24-hour rhythm, and it's tied to light, temperature, food, and stress. So those are the things that are affecting the circadian rhythm. So cortisol is kind of your sunrise hormone. It gives you energy in the morning. So it should be in a normal pattern, I should say. In the morning, our cortisol should start to rise as we wake up, start to get more energy. Melatonin is our moonlight hormone. So this is going to calm your body into sleep at night. So cortisol should actually be dropping in the evening, and then melatonin should be rising. So when that rhythm starts to get thrown off due to blue light, looking at screens at night, poor blood sugar balance, or stress or inflammation, it's going to start to disrupt everything. So then we have to look at what is disrupting sleep. Sleep struggles are not random. They're usually going to stem from some type of physical, emotional, or environmental cause. And so I'm just going to list some of the most common. So caffeine and alcohol are actually going to be at the top of this list. These are major circadian rhythm disruptors. There is no way around it. It just is. So those two things are at the top of the list. Blood sugar crashes are going to be next. So if you're someone who wakes frequently at night, specifically between 2 and 4 a.m., this is a sign to you that your blood sugar is not stabilizing or crashing. And it then causes your cortisol to rise and actually causes you to wake up. So this is a sign of blood sugar imbalance. Histamine overload would be another one. So night sweats, racing thoughts, just constant restlessness. Many times we'll go with histamine overload when we're looking at it from a sleep perspective. And then the gut, of course, because 95% of that melatonin, that sunset hormone, is actually made in the gut, comes from serotonin in the gut. So we have to be really careful and looking at all these avenues at what could be some of the disruptors. Okay, so we have to look at what disrupt sleep struggles are not random. They're going to come from things like physical, emotional, environmental causes. I'm just going to list some of the most common. Caffeine and alcohol, there's no way around it. Those guys are at the top of the list. Blood sugar crashes. So if you're someone who's frequently waking between 2 and 4 a.m., this is a sign that your blood sugar is imbalanced. Histamine overload. So there's lots of symptoms of histamine overload, but when we're looking at it from a sleep perspective, if you're having constant restlessness, night sweats, racing thoughts can fall into category there. Of course, different types of gut issues. So that melatonin that we need to be rising at night to help us start winding down is actually made from serotonin in the gut. So if my gut flora is off or my microbiome is disrupted, I can have some issues there. On a deeper level, things like parasites, mold, and Lyme. And I mention those here because I want you to know that they are important and they certainly can be causing disruption, but I don't really want you to go down the root cause rabbit hole. I just want you to keep in the back of your brain, okay, those could be options of why my sleep is disrupted. But many of the other things that I'm mentioning are going to be things that are on the front lines that need to be changed or addressed for you to get better restorative sleep. So EMFs, I do like to mention, so we should not be sleeping by our phones. Wi-Fi routers, if able, to set them up to be able to turn off at night. So we're not sleeping with those signals, especially if they are near a bedroom or near a bed. We want to be really careful with that. Blue light. So of course, any type of screen is going to be emitting blue light. This is actually going to cause melatonin to decrease. So we got to be really careful with that. Any type of mental load. So lots of stress, mental overload, emotional trauma, grief. Of course, these are going to be sleep disruptors. But also for kids, it's important to mention that mouth breathing and airway dysfunction. So mouth breathing, if you're noticing a lot of snoring and even a lot of like drooling, which can also potentially be a sign of parasites, but it's something to keep in mind with kids, and potentially working with like a myofunctional therapist or getting an eval with them may be very helpful. So since we're talking about kids, we'll just touch on that. Sleep disturbances in kids might actually look a little bit different than they do in adults. So special things we might want to pay attention to: snoring is an obvious, drooling, I mentioned, and mouth breathing. So if you notice that they're constantly breathing out of their mouth, or I used to call this, my brother actually I call him Darth Vader, because when he slept at night, it just sounded like Darth Vader. He was constantly breathing through his mouth. So some of you might know what that sounds like. Trouble falling asleep or actually waking early, anxiety at bedtime, or hyperactivity during the day, which we don't always associate with poor sleep, but those commonly go hand in hand. Sensory issues, frequent illness, so dropped immune systems, and then also speech delays and different developmental concerns can go together with poor sleep. So I always wondered as a mom, how much sleep should my kids actually be getting? So it's important to mention that here. So I'm just going to kind of go down the list. As a general rule of thumb, for 0 to 3 months, we should be at like 4 to 17 hours, 4 to 12 months, 12 to 16 hours. 1 to 2 years should be 11 to 14 hours, 3 to 5 years, 10 to 13, 6 to 12 years old, 9 to 12 hours, and then 13 to 18, 8 to 10. And then as adults, we should be getting about 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So that can just be kind of like a helpful rule of thumb. Of course, don't like hold to that as a complete gold standard for every night. But overall, we want to be getting as close to that as possible. But here's a really big red flag. If your kids grind their teeth, breathe through their mouth, or have enlarged tonsils, then they're probably not getting deep restorative sleep. So looking into something like myofunctional therapy, looking at evaluating tug ties or different type of nasal support can be helpful. These issues are often misdiagnosed as behavioral problems. So we got to be careful with that when really it's just poor sleep quality. Okay, and then another really important thing to mention is what your sleep symptoms might mean. So let's just break it down. Most of these are very common. I get questions about a lot. We mentioned the waking between 2 and 4 a.m., and this is going to be either blood sugar crash or liver congestion. It's really common to see both of those. If you can't fall asleep, so this is possibly that your cortisol is high. So remember, we want this to be high in the morning because it's helping us wake up, getting energy. If it's staying high or rising at night, then it's going to be very difficult for you to go to bed. Another reason for this might be low GABA or just nervous system stress. So staying stuck in that fight or flight and having trouble getting into that parasympathetic or our like deep and relaxed state. Of course, if my system is in overdrive, my nervous system, then I'm going to have trouble winding down. Feeling wired before bed. So that wired and tired, you'll hear sometimes. Again, overproducing cortisol at night is typically what's happening here. Restless legs or muscle twitching. This is actually often tied to B vitamins or certain types of mineral deficiencies. So being sure that we're having a diet that's rich in minerals, supplementing if necessary. B vitamins, it is important to be evaluated for this because depending on different methylation statuses, it's important to know what type of B vitamins you might need. Not most of us need methylated vitamins, but some of us need more than others depending on our methylation status. So I absolutely love B6 specifically for restless legs. And so Happy Bees by Core Formulas is actually one of my favorites. Of course, magnesium comes into play here. So just be sure that you're being evaluated for that or paying attention to it if necessary. If you can't stay asleep, so that you're someone who has no problem going to sleep, but you have trouble staying asleep, so histamine is usually or can be too high at night. You might be reacting to certain EMFs or some hidden infections that are going on within the body. Okay, so maybe you resonate with some of those things. You hear me say some of those symptoms and you think, oh, my child does that, or that happens to me. What do I do about it? So this is what we're going to focus on for the rest of the episode. And the first is going to be balancing blood sugar. So of course, eating protein-focused meals 3 times a day, as balanced as possible. Eating protein and fat-focused dinner can be really helpful here. Add a bedtime snack, especially if you wake up hungry within the evening. Doing a snack before bed that's higher in protein and fat is going to be really helpful. And then supporting digestion. So salt water, different types of bitters, digestive enzymes can all be things to help manage that. I'm not going to dive into the deep waters of blood sugar control, And we can certainly do that or reach out to somebody that can help walk you through that if you think that you are experiencing blood sugar crashes within the night. Supporting natural melatonin. So here's some really basic tools you can use. Getting morning sunlight in your eyes is actually a precursor to making more melatonin in the evening. So you often hear, get morning sunlight. I've talked about that. Sure, you've heard other people talk about that, but that's one of the reasons why. It's a very simple tool to start implementing, a rhythm, I should say, to implement, and it helps increase that melatonin at night. Watching the sunset when possible. We're in Arizona. We have beautiful sunsets, especially this time of year. But if you can get your eyes on the sunset, even for just a little bit, is also helpful in naturally raising melatonin. Avoiding screens and blue light after dinner. You can use blue blocking glasses if you wanted. If you needed to be on a screen for any reason in the evening, that is a potential option that might be helpful. And then, of course, you can actually use red lights, salt lamps, candles in the evening. I'll be honest, I don't walk around in my house with just candlelight, but I do have different bulbs in different rooms in the evenings that I will turn on. So those are certainly an option. And then sleeping actually in total darkness is very helpful for increasing melatonin. I have one child who just naturally has always loved that, like never afraid of the dark, wants a deep, dark room. And she's also my best sleeper. So just anecdotally, I will add that there. Okay, so reducing histamine. Histamine can rise for many different reasons. But if it's high and keeping you up at night, avoiding leftovers. So histamine will actually rise specifically in like aged meats, fermented foods, different types of processed items. You can focus on different types of supplements, specifically one that supports DAO, which is an enzyme that helps degrade histamine, B6, different methylated Bs, folate, iron, and vitamin C can actually be really helpful here. And you want to continue to support the gut and all of the detox pathways, especially if histamines are high secondary to mold or parasites. This can be really important. Okay, and then nourishing the gut-brain pathway. So as always, we always want to be nourishing this pathway. But really here, we're focusing on increasing amino acids, increasing protein in the diet. We want at least 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. We want to ensure that we're getting magnesium, trace minerals, and then, of course, addressing anything that might be throwing that gut flora off. So at a deeper level, parasites, candida, dysbiosis. Again, I don't want you to dive too far into that. For the purpose of this podcast, I just want you to really take into account the more easy implementable, is that a word? More easy action-based items. But if you do those and you're still not getting progress, it's important to know that there is a deeper level and deeper roots that could be to some of these things if those are not working for you after a while. But being consistent in them, I should say. Okay, so cutting EMF exposure. So unplugging Wi-Fi at night, I mentioned that. Do not sleep next to your phone. Please put it in another room, preferably as far away as possible. You can use grounding bags or mats actually under your bed. I actually do not have these, but I have wanted to get some for a very long time. They're very easily implementable tool that you can use. And then going outside barefoot whenever possible, standing on the grass, grounding is what that might be called, especially if you're anywhere near a beach or anything like that. But just going to the ground with bare feet can be really helpful to cut EMF exposure. And as a bonus, actually help with restorative sleep. So some of these things we don't often connect as helping one another. We might think like, oh, I'm doing that for better health, but they're all connected. And so all of these little things are going to help with restorative sleep. And then creating a really good sleep environment. So keeping your room cool. So it's said between 65 and 68 degrees is actually the ideal temperature for your bedroom. I personally love to sleep in a cold room with heavy covers. Like I said, I'm in Arizona, so sometimes it's hard to get the room, especially in the summer, that cold and to stay there and still have big covers. But that's something that I definitely love, and it's going to be really helpful. Blackout curtains is another. So remember, we want to have as dark of a room as possible. White noise, so some type of noise machine can be really helpful. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes they can be stressful to me. And that's just my personal take, but I personally prefer a fan that's a little bit louder than necessarily a white noise machine. And then magnesium can be really helpful at night. Earthly makes a great magnesium lotion if you don't want to supplement, or use for kids can be really helpful. Weighted blankets can be very calming to the sympathetic nervous system, helping to get you into that parasympathetic state, which when we're sleeping. That's where we need the body to go. We need the body to go there to get to sleep. So that's a great tool. And then, of course, like winding down with a bedtime routine. Maybe it's prayer. Maybe it's a warm Epsom salt bath. You can use that. To be very calming. It helps increase magnesium. You definitely want to use unscented so you don't also end up with a UTI. It's good to know. And then when it comes to kids, there's also some very like kid-friendly specific tools that we can use. So that magnesium lotion that I mentioned by Earthly, there's different type of sprays. Red nightlights can be great, or even a salt lamp in the bedroom, weighted blankets, blackout curtains. So some of these are the same. If you have a mouth breather, using some type of mouth tape under guidance, of course. I would never recommend this for a very young toddler or baby, but older, this might be an option. Myofunctional therapy, if you know your child has enlarged tonsils, they're constantly snoring, they have that Darth Vader type breathing, those would be reasons that would be worth getting checked out by a myofunctional therapist. And then castor oil packs for kids really over the age of 3 can be something to consider as well, and very easy to do. And that would go for adults as well. So you were designed to sleep, not just survive. I just want to leave you with this. Helping your child sleep better begins with you sleeping better, you starting to implement those things within your foundation, and then they will just become a lifestyle for the rest of your family. Helping your body rest begins with trusting with what God already designed. So as always, this is not about chasing perfection. It's about saying, I'm here to support the rhythms that God gave me, finding 2 or 3 of those that might fit into your lifestyle. And once you get those consistent, then you can start to add on from there. Let's give your body the sleep that it was absolutely created for. So I hope this was helpful. I hope there are a few tips in here that you can grab and take action with. I'd love to hear if you implement any of those things and they were helpful to you. If this episode spoke to you, would you do me a favor and please share it with someone else who might need rest right now? You never know what God might heal through something as simple as sleep. So until next time, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in to Design Foundations. I hope today's episode left you feeling encouraged and equipped to take meaningful steps towards building a healthier, more intentional life for you and your family. If you found value in this conversation, I'd love for you to share it with someone else who might need this encouragement today. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling inspired, leave a review. It helps this message reach more families like yours. Until next time, remember, true wellness starts with a strong foundation, rooted in faith, and grows with intentional care. Take care, and I'll see you next week.
This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. The information shared is not a substitute for professional medical care. Always consult your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health or wellness routine.